And good afternoon, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us as we present our healthy heart practices and preventing disease in older adults. This webinar today is being presented by Erica A. McIntyre, who proudly received her BA, Bachelor's of Arts in Speech, Communications, and Theater. Also her Master's of Education in Exercise Science from the illustrious Tennessee State University. She currently works with the American Heart Association as a Director of Community Impact and has held this position since 2019. As a champion for health equity, she seeks to advance cardiovascular health for all in the greater Washington region. Welcome, Erica, and thank you so kindly.
Thank you, Angela. And good afternoon, everyone. Happy Black History Month and happy Heart Month. We are so excited today to share with you how you can reclaim your rhythm. The American Heart Association's mission is to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. Our 2024 impact goal is for every person deserves the opportunity for health equity by 2024. The American Heart Association will advance cardiovascular health for all, including identifying and removing barriers to health care access and quality. So what does reclaim your rhythm mean, and why are you seeing this on all of my slides today? For Heart Month, we have claimed that this theme is simply put to reclaim your rhythm. We recognize that over the course of the past 18 months with this pandemic, we've all been overwhelmed and stressed and extra sedentary, as well as just our mental health. We're stressed, right? We probably have not moved as much as we normally do. And so this year we find that it is most important for us to pause and think about what were those healthy habits we had prior to the pandemic. It's time for us to pick back on those. And so a great way to do that is reclaiming your rhythm, and dancing your heart out is a great way to do that. So whether it's dancing, walking, stretching, whatever it is that gets you up and moving, that's what we want to challenge you to do this month. Some other ways that you can be inspired to dance or move a little bit more are to think about that favorite song. What's that song that comes on the radio where you cannot sit still? Your foot is tapping, your fingers are snapping, you are up and you are shaking, you are ready to groove. Think about playing that song a little bit more this month. Turn on your favorite radio station. You can do this in the morning for a good way to boost and jumpstart your day, or even in the afternoon, have a lunch dance party. And also in the evening is a great time to do it as well. So I challenge all of you to think of ways that you can just dance and move a little bit more this week, not just this week, but like I said, this week, this month, and for the weeks to come. Let's take the Heart Challenge beyond just February, but think about ways that you can engage year long. February is Heart Month, and many times you will see red dress pins, or when you turn on your local news station, you may see your favorite news anchor wearing a red dress, wearing a red tie, or even our Go Red for Women red dress pin. You may have even seen some of the red dress pins when you visit your church, or you yourself may own a red dress pin. That may be how you think of the American Heart Association. But I just want to remind you, if you're not familiar with the Go Red for Women campaign, it really is to help raise awareness, because 1 in 3 women are dying from cardiovascular disease. And we feel like losing one is one too many. It's not an option. Sadly, this statistic has been this way for way too long. And a lot of that is because women are not aware that heart disease is our #1 killer. There are a lot of myths out there, but I'm here to tell you today, heart disease is women's #1 killer. And African American, Black, and Hispanic women, our numbers are larger than those of Caucasian women. And so it's very important to take heart health very seriously and share and help raise awareness with others that you care about. So now that I've shared a little bit about Heart Month and what our theme is, I want to pause and just kind of ask from you, how do you plan to reclaim your rhythm this month? And feel free to use the chat to type in your questions or to share, how you plan to reclaim your rhythm. I'm also open to hearing if there is a favorite song, that song that gets you moving. I know a lot of times for me, it's Jill Scott's Golden. If that song comes on, I am not sitting still in a chair. I am dancing as well as singing along with Jill. Again, if there are any comments on just how you want to reclaim your rhythm, I'll allow Angie or Angela to let me know what you see in the chat.
So Erica, it looks like someone's going to find their rhythm through hiking. Others plan to go on a walk. I myself, I love 80s music. Someone's going to dance around their house to Mary J. Blige's Just Fine. Someone's going to go to church and participate in their church activities. Wow.
Awesome.
Looks like we've got a lot of dancers on this webinar this afternoon. Fantastic.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Angie. And thank you all for sharing. Just Fine, Mary J. Blige, that's another one. So I'm going to make sure I listen to that today. So thank you for that. Love the hiking, especially on a day like today. The weather is a little bit warmer. The sun's out. So great ideas. Love it. And I hope you all will continue to think of ideas and make sure that you reclaim your rhythm this month and the year ahead. All right. So we just talked about ways to move a little bit more, but 2 other ways that really are the choices that you can make to have a healthy heart are, in addition to moving more, eating smart, but also managing your blood pressure. So I'm going to pause here to just share a video with you on managing your blood pressure.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it. Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it. Gonna get it, gonna slip it, gonna cuff it. Check it, talk to doctor and share it. Gonna get it, gonna slip it, gonna cuff it. Check it, talk to doctor and share it.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. High blood pressure silently affects millions of Americans. Staying on top of your blood pressure is as simple as these 4 easy steps. Self-monitoring is power. Visit manageyourbp.org to learn more.
All right. So that's our Get Down with Your Blood Pressure ad. And it's just a great way of, as we talk about dancing, a catchy way to remember those tips of how to manage your blood pressure or how to take. So when we have that conversation about blood pressure, really thought it was important to highlight for you the different categories. Now, you may be familiar with these. However, this is just a great reminder for you to understand when you go to visit your healthcare provider, what these numbers mean. So as you see here in the green, this is your normal range, thinking about less than 120 and less than 80. You'll see here then the elevated and really looking at that systolic number. That's going to be that top number. And then the diastolic is that lower number. And if you're not familiar with systolic and diastolic, essentially one is measuring the rate at the blood that rushes out as your heart pumps. And then the lower number, that diastolic, is measuring the blood or the heart when it's at that resting state. And so really important, both, the top number, the systolic and the diastolic are important, but you will see that systolic number is certainly going to be the one that your healthcare provider, as well as you, should pay very close attention to. When we look at high blood pressure or hypertension stage 1, that's when you're going to have a reading of 130 to 139, or between that 80 and 89 range. Typically here, this is where your healthcare provider is going to really work with you on developing a full treatment and management plan, which can consist of medication, but likely they'll still encourage some lifestyle changes, thinking about your physical activity, as well as your diet and how you're eating. High blood pressure or hypertension stage 2 is any number 140 or greater, or 90 or higher. And then that hypertensive crisis, if you are ever to take your blood pressure at home, if you receive a reading higher than 180 and higher than 120, you should consult with your doctor immediately. And many times in this case is where you're going to want to go to the hospital and just take some extra precautions here. Very important when it comes to managing blood pressure. Rightfully so, over this past year with the pandemic, I think it's safe to say all of our blood pressures have elevated a little bit more than usual. These have been stressful times. The data is reflecting it from healthcare providers, especially here in the greater Washington region. We've recognized that our numbers have gone up. We may not have been managing our blood pressure as well as we had prior to the pandemic. But again, rightfully so, these are stressful times. But as we have the conversation about reclaiming our rhythm, we got to get down with our blood pressure. And so I really challenge you, if you are, if you used to monitor your blood pressure at your local pharmacy. I know many people used to do that. You go in, you check to see what your reading is, and that's how you'd stay on top. Now, in a conversation with your healthcare provider, you may be encouraged a little bit more now than ever before to think about purchasing your own blood pressure monitor to have at home. Now, there are two types of blood pressure monitors that you can use to take your own blood pressure. We have the manual model that many of you might be familiar with. I think a lot of times you think of the one where you're pumping, right? Where you have the stethoscope-like pump. So that is one model. There's also now, there are automatic models that are available. And so those are ones where, as you saw kind of in that video that I showed, where you just, put the cuff on, making sure that you're using a cuff that fits your arm. That is a key way to get an error in your reading if you're using a cuff that's too large or too small. So, one, making sure that you have a cuff that properly fits. But if you're using that automated model, you just press a button and it will record your reading. I'd say the best way to identify which either manual or automatic cuff that you are going to use is to make sure that it's validated and a calibrated model. And so I can share resources with you. The American Heart Association keeps a guide and updates it regularly to make sure that we have a list of those monitors that are on that validated list. And you can purchase, your blood pressure monitors in your local pharmacy, as well as you can order online through Amazon. I know over the course of the pandemic, because more people were trying to get blood pressures cuffs at home, there were shortages and many times hard to find. I luckily started finding blood pressure monitors in local Office Depot, which I was not aware of. So I just share that to say where you can purchase your cuffs are, that is growing a little bit, but the key thing is to make sure that you look at one that is on that validated list. And again, I will be sure to share that with you. So some additional risk factors that you can control. We talked about high blood pressure. We talked about that lack of physical activity, but I want to highlight smoking. I know many times that's a habit that we turn to if we're stressed, but this is something that is going to increase your risk for heart disease or stroke. So this is a habit I highly encourage you to cut because it can have a great impact on your heart health. So quitting smoking, making sure you know your cholesterol numbers, avoid having high cholesterol, understanding that when it comes to cholesterol, there is good cholesterol and there is bad cholesterol. So you need a little bit. So cholesterol is that waxy substance that lines our blood. And so our bodies need a little bit of that. So it's a good thing. However, what happens is once it gets to be high, that wax buildup is too much and it causes clogs. And so knowing this number, knowing what your baseline is very important. When it comes to being overweight or obese, again, just managing our weight. But I'd also say, in addition to thinking about being overweight, also thinking about being underweight. That is also a condition that can elevate our risk for heart disease. So just, working with our healthcare provider, understanding your body mass index, and if you are in a healthy weight category for your body type. High blood sugar, making sure that you know these numbers as well. And then, again, that lack of physical activity as we started talking about. One other thing I know that I wanted to address when it comes to blood pressure, I think a question came up before in regards to understanding when should you take your blood pressure. And so I would say, what's best if you start to measure at home, it's really important to think about taking it both in the morning and in the evening, but not to just take it once. So I'd say take it 2 to 3 times in the morning and 2 to 3 times in the evening, and doing that for a week straight and journaling what your readings are. What that's going to do, typically in the morning, is the best time to take it because it's before you can, you meet the day and anything that may cause you to elevate. However, naturally, our bodies do elevate our blood pressure a little bit when we sleep. And so that, importance of kind of waiting 5 minutes. So when you sit and get prepared to take it, waiting 5 minutes to take a few deep breaths to allow your body to just settle is a great way to prep to take that. So again, taking it in the morning and in the evening for a week to then learn what your benchmark is. And then you'll understand kind of what the average, what your number is, where it should be. It'll also help you recognize what elevates your blood pressure. So your readings from the morning might look different in the evening, especially if in that evening reading just before you had a dinner that might have been a little higher in sodium, or did you have a stressful conversation with someone? So recognizing what are things that elevate, and that way you can work to improve how you respond to certain things. Now, there are risk factors that we can't control, those being our age, our race and ethnicity, our gender, our family history, and then previous heart attack or stroke. Now, just because we can't control these doesn't mean that we aren't empowered by them and knowing them and sharing them. Many times we go to our healthcare providers and they want us to fill out all these forms. And sometimes I think many of us are guilty of when it's time to fill out that form about our family medical history. You're like, oh, I don't want to fill out these forms. You just hurry up and sign and you're ready for your appointment. This is very important for us to not only document, but to have a conversation with our healthcare provider. We need to let them know, hey, this runs in my family. Should we be testing for this? Recognizing what age, if your relatives were diagnosed with heart disease, being able to communicate that so you can start getting tested earlier. Again, the family history is so important, and it's very important for us to share that information with the generations behind us. So just because we can't control them doesn't mean we aren't empowered by knowing that this may run in our family. And then it just means we got to take extra action on those areas that we can control. Eat more color. A great way to think about just working on that nutrition piece is thinking about all the beautiful colors of fresh produce that we can eat, and mixing it up. I think many times when it comes to our fruits and vegetables, we know what we love and we stick with those. I encourage us to all just, look at this beautiful photo. It looks so pretty. And just think about our plates when we, prepare our plate for breakfast or lunch or dinner. Is it colorful? Are there ways that we can incorporate some additional vegetables that maybe we don't normally use, or different fruit? If you're interested in smoothies is a great way to get your fruit and vegetable servings in. So just, being open to trying, but just staying committed to eating more color. When it comes to women's health, many times one of the reasons why our diets are not A+ diets is this right here. We tend to lack eating a lot of color. Like I said, we find what we like and we stick to that, but being empowered and encouraged to be open to trying new things, or trying some of those old favorites in a new way. Thinking about your breakfast plate. If you like your eggs and toast and maybe I'll say turkey sausage to start your day. In my household, I always challenge us, well, I don't see fruit, I don't see vegetables on your plate. So now my family knows that I'm going to find a way to saute and throw some spinach in the eggs. There's going to be a fruit cup on the side. So there's going to be color added there. And so I challenge you to think of ways to do that as well. Now, my husband gets on me for throwing spinach in his eggs. So we do have a little bit of okay, some days I can, some days I can't, but then I sneak spinach in his smoothies that he doesn't know. He can't even taste it. He likes doing smoothies in the morning, and I will throw spinach in there. Like I said, he doesn't know, but he's getting his greens in. So just, be creative, try new things, but think about eating more color. Gonna pause and just ask, when was the last time you stretched, and have you exercised today? And feel free to drop that in the chat. When was the last time you took a break to stretch or exercise? Has anyone done any walking today? Have you done any stretching? Does anyone do any yoga? And when was the last time? All right. And Angie or Angela, let me know if you see any good comments coming in.
Looks like we got a lot of walkers, and few folks have stretched. Very good.
Awesome. Well, it's a great place to be, especially as we are entering the afternoon. So love hearing that many of you have already moved a bit today. Sometimes I have these sessions and people are like, oh, whoops, I haven't done anything just yet. But getting it done early is a great way to start. So I challenge those who haven't, think about, it doesn't have to be much. And that's, a misconception that we have. As the pandemic maybe shut down a lot of your outlets to move more, whether it was going to an aerobics class or going to a water aerobics class, getting into the pool. If you didn't have access to it, what were you supposed to do? Well, I tell you, don't be discouraged by not being able to do what you used to be able to do, but think about what you can do. And just always remember, doing something is better than nothing. So there are stretches that you can do even just sitting in a chair, stretching our arms out, lifting our legs up, and just stretching our back a little, stretching our shoulders. Doing that is just awesome for your heart. And recognizing there are exercises that you can do at home without any equipment. I'm sure you've heard, pulling the milk jug or carton out of the refrigerator gives you a little strength, so you can have weights, lifting your arms a little. For bicep curls is a great thing that you can do. Even just walking around, and of course, I'm going to say dancing. We've got a lot of dancers out there, so I'm going to encourage you to dance as you're watching your favorite TV show. If a commercial break or a break for the ads comes on, instead of thinking about skipping the ad or rushing through the commercial break, use that as a break to just stand up, stretch a little, stretch your neck out. Those are great ways that you can incorporate exercise and movement throughout your day. So certainly encourage you all to continue. And again, many kudos to those who have already gotten a walk in today. Stopping stress in its tracks. So really important for us to revisit, and as we reclaim our rhythm, think of ways that you can cope when you're getting stressed out. What are those go-to things? I know for me, many times I know what music is going to help soothe and calm me. If you need to take a break to just have, some mindfulness, some meditation or prayer, make sure you tap into that. Our country's mental health has just really been through a lot over this past year. And so it's really important as we think about our heart health and as we talk about reclaiming our rhythm, we reclaim how we cope and deal with these stressful times, because it does impact our heart. And so making sure that we're getting enough sleep, making sure we're eating in a nice schedule. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the phrase of being hangry, when you're hungry and it makes you angry. And so then you get hangry. Thinking about, maybe preparing your healthy snacks. Maybe you have an orange cut up that you're going to carry with you so that you can eat that if you do get a little hungry, to prevent you from getting hangry before that next meal. And so just thinking of ways that you can plan ahead, because as you may have heard this one before, but if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And so think about this when it comes to your toolbox of all your tricks and tips for how you manage stress. So just want to have that reminder here as we talk about our heart health this month. Next, I just want to go into signs of a heart attack. Very, very important for us to revisit this. And so you may have heard it before, but I'm here to say it again and again and again. If you have symptoms, don't wait, call 911. I know many of us were a little nervous about calling 911 throughout this pandemic, but I guarantee getting professional medical assistance in these times are still the best thing for us to do. So some heart attacks are sudden and intense, but most of them start slowly with mild pain or discomfort. Following are some of the signs that can mean a heart attack is happening. Uncomfortable pressure, squeezing, fullness or pain in the center of your chest, pain or discomfort in one or both arms, the back, neck, jaw, or stomach, shortness of breath with or without chest discomfort, and then other signs such as cold sweats, nausea, or lightheadedness. As with men, women's most common heart attack symptom is chest pain or discomfort. However, women are somewhat more likely than men to experience some of the other common symptoms, particularly your shortness of breath, nausea, vomiting, or again, that back and jaw pain. Then when it comes to stroke warning signs, very important here to recognize, we have this acronym here, FAST, face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time to call 911. Sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body. Sudden confusion or trouble speaking or understanding. Sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes. Sudden trouble walking, dizziness or loss of balance or coordination. And then sudden or severe headache with no known cause. I will also share when it comes to recognizing that a stroke may be taking place, many times it's difficult to recognize it when it's happening to you, but I challenge you to also be an advocate for those around us, those that we see, those that we care for in this these times we're having more and more virtual meetings over the course of the past 18 months, there have been people whose lives have been saved because somebody on the camera with them recognized some of these symptoms. They recognized the person they were on a virtual meeting with. They noticed that drooping of the face. They noticed the slurred speech, and they were able to call 911 and get that person help. And so share these reminders again, just for us to not only advocate for our individual health, but for us to advocate for those that we love and care about. So if you recognize these symptoms, again, face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, it's time to call 911. No time to delay. This is definitely, when it comes to stroke, time is life. Time is, the difference between a full recovery and not having a full recovery. So this is not one to take lightly, nor is, a heart attack. I always tell people, I'd rather you call 911 and get medical attention and them tell you it was something else than for you to delay getting help. Because many times people would say, oh, I'm just going to take a shower, I'm going to take a nap, I'm going to wait a little to see if I'm feeling better. And that time that's lost from getting medical attention really can be what prevents you from saving a life. So really want to emphasize, when in doubt, call 911. I would much rather for you to be sent home and them tell you this isn't what's going on, than for you to be at home in pain. All right. And so, your local Greater Washington Region Heart Association is just really grateful for you taking the time out today to think about heart health and want to be educated and really just reclaim your rhythm. Of course, beyond Heart Month, we have a lot of activities going on year round. And so hopefully we all can stay in touch. And, I will work with Angela and Angie to make sure that you are aware of the different activities that's going on. I know we've got a lot of dancers out there. So we do have coming up in April, our Greater Washington Region Heart Ball. It's an evening to come out, as well as to dance. So there's opportunity to dance. It will be at this year it'll be at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, but more to come on that. But just sharing, even in the fall, we have a heart walk out on the National Mall. The past couple of years, it's, converted to a virtual experience, or even one that just hasn't been as large as it's been in the past. But, I'm praying and hopeful that this coming up November, things will be in a safer place for us all to meet on the National Mall to walk for our heart health. So thank you all very much. I really appreciated this opportunity to speak with you today. I will open the floor if there are any questions, any comments. I'm happy to take those at this time.
Well, Erica, thank you. Thank you very much for such a thoughtful and thought-provoking presentation. I know I'm going to certainly reclaim my rhythm. And as you just said, I'd like to invite our audience to ask questions, to use the chat to ask any questions that you have. And as we wait for those questions to come in, I have a question or two I'd like to ask you just to kick off the conversation. You mentioned the American Heart Association offering dance opportunities, but wanted to know, beyond Washington, D.C., does the association offer virtual or in-person dance opportunities throughout the week, throughout the year? And if so, how might someone participate?
Absolutely. So the American Heart Association itself does not typically provide kind of a continuum of dance lessons or classes. However, we have, especially throughout the pandemic, partnered with different national dance stars to have them provide us with YouTube videos. And so I can be sure to share that. So that's, a great way if you want a video to dance with or have some good music. We do have those opportunities available.
Okay, and thank you. And then my second question, Erica, is, and most women, when they think about cold or hot flashes, we think about menopause, not a heart attack. Can you give us any guidance on knowing the difference?
Yes, and so that's an excellent question. And I will say one that there is still a lot of research being done. And with that research, I'd say the Heart Association has actually been behind on doing research on women and people of color. And so there's a bit of a catch-up game that's happening now. And so that's why in women, you're seeing a lot of these symptoms are so subtle, and that's why so many of us don't even know when we are experiencing. Sadly, at this time, there's not a distinction. And because it's not a one size fits all, those hot flashes or cold sweats that you may experience when it comes to a heart attack, you may not be able to tell the difference. And that's where you have to just kind of advocate, if something I'd say is off, to just get checked. You'd rather, like I said, you'd rather be sent home and told, I think this is a hot flash, this isn't, versus the other way around. I would also say though, what some early studies are starting to show, that shortness of breath piece seems to be a little more prevalent. So if you are experiencing the hot flash, are feeling like you're going to faint, if there's a shortness in breath or nausea along with that, that's going to be probably that indicator for you.
Thank you. Looks like we have a few questions in the chat. So one of our participants would like to know, is taking your blood pressure daily too often?
Now, I will say this is certainly one that I would probably not be able to answer because I do not know medical history. So I want to shy away from that one. However, I'd say if you have questions, or if your body is telling you maybe not, it's time for you to have a conversation with your healthcare provider. Especially if you were on medication and maybe now you are doing more physical activity, you haven't, made some changes to your diet. It might be time for you and your healthcare provider to have a conversation about, maybe it is time to change the dosage of your medication, but that's going to be one that's individualized.
Okay. And then we have a question that just came in, and it reads, can you provide a link to calibrated blood pressure monitors and where this information can be found?
And yes. And so what I will do, I will provide the list for the calibrated and validated models to Angie and Angela. And when you send maybe a kind of a message out to the group in the end, that way they can have that. So yep, I will make sure that comes to you.
Okay, thank you. And the next question reads, what if you have typically low blood pressure? Should you seek medical attention immediately?
And so this is another one where knowing your number, right? Knowing your benchmark. If you know that you typically run low, that is probably normal for you. But again, a conversation you'll want to have with your healthcare provider just to stay on top of that. They may encourage you, just as you would if you had higher blood pressure, for 1 week, to just diligently measure, and doing, a measurement in the morning, a measurement in the evening, to just understand that baseline and understand, does it, elevate a little bit through midday? Is it something that you eat? Just to really understand that in totality.
Okay. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on that, Erica. Just a question. How many readings should you present your healthcare provider at your annual physical? 6 months, 3 months, a week, 2 weeks? What would give your healthcare provider a good gauge of your numbers?
And I would say, honestly, that magic number is that week period. However, I say to use that as your benchmark, right? Depending on if you are in that normal range or if you are kind of in that slightly elevated. I'd say that slightly elevated is where it's time to take some additional action, really pay attention to it. So you might want to take readings monthly. Start paying attention to, you can keep a journal. So then when you go to visit, you can say, this month, this is what my readings were. I noticed it elevated on this month, but you also might be able to say, I recognized all these things were going on. My job changed, a new addition to the family, things might have happened to naturally elevate it. Did your diet change? But I'd say, depending on kind of where you are, but I think having a month log check-in is a good one to share.
Okay. And we have another, and it asks, can you speak to the importance of drinking water and at what temperature to keep your blood pressure in check?
The wonderful water question. So of course, water, stay hydrated. We're having a conversation about water intake prior to this meeting starting. I'm gonna encourage drink plenty of water. Now there always is kind of that conversation around, do you drink room temperature? Do you drink ice cold? The body, when you're drinking a more room temperature water, it's naturally matching kind of where it is. To drink a colder water, it has to then change that temperature. So it does a little more work. But at the end of the day, honestly, I will say just drink your water. I think if there is a temperature that you prefer, sometimes having, warm water, maybe with lemon in the morning is a great maybe exchange if you normally are a coffee drinker. So if he just likes having something warm, that is okay. It's very nourishing and cleansing for your body. But water is just good for your body, regardless of, what temperature you're drinking.
Thank you. We've got a great question here, and it reads, in addition to eating more colorful fruits and vegetables, does the research say we should eat less red meat?
So I will say it does. However, there's always research happening. I'd say there's been a lot of new studies also coming out around many that have changed to do more vegan or vegetarian and having that conversation about introducing meat back into the diet. So I will say this is one that's probably a little more individualized, but typically, everything in moderation. I'd say when it comes to the red meat, really looking at doing more of the lean protein in poultry, so your chicken, your fish. But again, not saying that you can't have, but depending where you are in that management, you might be able to do a little more or less. But I'd say thinking about that variety. So certainly, having that protein content, but thinking about also how is it prepared. That's a lot of times what's going to get you, how it's prepared. Are we baking? Are we frying? Are we grilling? Thinking about that and thinking about what you're eating along with it to make it a well-balanced plate.
Okay. And then we have two other questions that have come in. And one is a myth buster, and it reads, are women protected from heart attacks because we have estrogen?
And false. Unfortunately, no. I know we think we've got that superpower, but we are not. And honestly, that's, that myth that's out there, it's a very well-known myth. And that's a problem. We're honestly seeing heart disease impact women at younger and younger ages. We're seeing women in their 20s and 30s starting to have heart disease. And so that's why it's so important. I hope each and every one of you, shares with 5 people that heart disease is the #1 killer for women, just to help raise awareness and tell them, did you know that, by reclaiming your rhythm and how you're going to do it, that's one way that you can work to improve heart health. So
that's a great segue into the next question, because you think you answered it, but the question reads, women are not at risk for heart attacks until after menopause.
False. That is not true. As I just said, and I will emphasize again, heart disease is happening earlier and earlier in women, which is why it's so important for us, to spread the word, to share it with our family members, share our medical history. If we recognize at a certain age, our blood pressure, became high blood pressure, we need to document what age were we diagnosed, when did we see that change, and tell that with the generations behind us, because earlier and earlier, we're going to have to advocate. And many times we're going to have to, as women and as younger women, older women, regardless of where we are on that spectrum, we are going to have to go to our physicians and many times advocate, test me for that. Please check me, check this for me, because a lot of times they're not doing it. So we have to be our own advocates.
And just to piggyback on that, are most of these tests covered by insurance or Medicare, Medicaid?
And yes, a number of them are. And that's where, some of those key numbers, understanding kind of cholesterol, understanding your blood pressure, understanding your blood sugar and body mass index. Those are things that, you can kind of knock out usually with your primary care physician. It doesn't even have to be a specialist, but understanding those numbers to know then if you do need to do more extensive. But usually at that point, it's a referral. And because of that referral piece, typically they will be covered.
Okay. And then we have a question that asks, how can I get my church more involved in finding its rhythm? What can I do?
I love this question. I work with a lot of our faith-based organizations in this area to help them find their rhythm. So, there are so many things, from having Go Red Sundays, having, the congregation think about wearing red, but beyond just wearing red, making sure that you share statistics, thinking about if there is a meal being served, thinking of ways to serve a meal that's lower in sodium, lower in sugar, and higher in fiber content. So that right there is just a combination of three that means it's heart healthy. And so that's one way. Even, if your church has a health and wellness ministry, thinking of ways to show, have different health lessons. The American Heart Association, we do have a series of lessons that community organizations can use for themselves. And so we've had lots of churches use those to share those resources within their congregation.
Okay. And then we have a question, and thank you, Erica. We have a question that reads, once you're started on meds for blood pressure, can you ever stop? And if so, how?
And so there are stories, a lot of people have had success stories where they have been able to come off medication. Again, it's not a one size fits all. So unfortunately, I can't give you, the 5 steps to accomplish that. But I will say that there really is power in what you eat and how you move your body and how you manage your stress. If you are able to get in the rhythm, find something that really works for you, there is opportunity, depending on where you are on that spectrum with your blood pressure, to bring that down, which is why it's so important to understand your number. So don't just go to that physician and let them take the number, write it down, and not tell you. You should ask them, what's that reading? Also understand if that reading comes back and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like my normal reading. Can you wait 5 minutes, take it again, and advocate? Because what happens too is if they document a reading that isn't accurate, they can have you on a treatment plan before you really need it to get to that treatment plan. And so certainly just be sure to recharge, that physical activity, that diet, find what works for you, and continue to have conversations. If your goal is to get off your medication, have that conversation with your healthcare provider to see, what that process could look like for you.
Okay. Then we have another question, and it reads, should I take my blood pressure seated or lying down? And does it have to be the same, both seated or lying down, morning and evening?
And it should be seated. Your blood pressure should be seated. Your feet should be planted flat on the ground. Your legs shouldn't be crossed. You should be sitting up nice and tall. And your arms should be elevated. So if you had like an arm rest, like that is the perfect position to take your blood pressure. And I'm sure all of us can think of a time where that's not how our blood pressure was taken, even if, in a medical office. But that's also, we work with healthcare providers to remind them of that, but why we also try to educate patients as well, because you should advocate and say, wait a minute, I'm not sitting, with my feet in the correct position to take this. Also, another thing to make sure that the cuff isn't going over your clothes. Make sure that, it's right on your arm to take that for accuracy.
Okay. It looks like we have time for 2 more questions, and we've got 2 great questions here. And the first reads, can you speak to mindfulness? I keep hearing about mindfulness, but I don't know what it means.
Absolutely. So that's a very good question. So when it comes to mindfulness, mindfulness is just that opportunity to slow down. We've got so much noise, so many things going on, and it just really encourages everyone to pause, either in silence. Sometimes you'll hear guided meditation, but where you can close your eyes if you're comfortable closing your eyes, but just sitting still without anything going on, maybe focusing on your breath. So taking a big inhale in and exhaling out and just trying to relax and just calming your body. And so, some people will do a mindful minute, and they might set a stopwatch for a minute to where they're just not going to do anything except for focus on their breath. And then some people expand that practice to where maybe they move from that minute to 5 minutes, to 10 minutes, to 15 minutes, to 20 minutes. And then you may find people that say, okay, every 15 minutes in the morning, I am going to practice mindfulness. Others, may take that time to read their scripture, to pray, and just have some quiet time. But that's what mindfulness means in that practice.
Okay. And then our final question, one of my favorite activities, is can you speak to the importance of getting a good night's rest and how that factors into good heart health?
Absolutely. And that is a great question. Our bodies need rest. I know we all think we're superhuman, right? There's so much to do, such little time, but our bodies, and especially our hearts, need that time to recharge, refuel, and recalibrate so it can take on and get us through the next day. And so we do ourselves a disservice when we don't get enough rest. I know, sometimes it's easy to get lost in a good book. You stay up late or keeping the TV on, but the time that we're doing that, our hearts are working and they're working and our minds are racing. So we're probably thinking about something that's got us, just thinking about what's going on next. And all those things impact how our heart operates and relaxes. And so getting that rest that our body needs is very important. So that's just an excellent one. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, Erica, thank you again. And thank you so much. I am going to certainly reclaim my rhythm. I love 80s music, and now you've given me an excuse to just dance. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful to our audience for such wonderful questions. And it looks like we have a minute. So if anybody has any additional questions they'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. It looks like we have a few requests, Erica, for your slide presentation.
Absolutely. Make sure you have a copy of that.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any additional questions, thank you very much, Erica, for joining us this afternoon and for all the work that you're doing, and to the American Heart Association. Thank you to our audience for joining us this afternoon. We hope you can join us on February 22nd as we delve into breast cancer. Know your risk factors. Again, good afternoon and thank you.